Hi, everyone. Ann Nguyen with the California Endowment. I'm just stepping into a program officer role in our CEO's office of programs and special projects, primarily managing our youth engagement and youth organizing work. And I've been at the endowment for about 6 years now, and our goals are really around health equity and addressing racial equity in the state of California. Prior to coming to the endowment, my background is really in public health. I did a lot of work right after Hurricane Katrina in the state of Louisiana, really restabilizing the health systems after health system and community development in New Orleans. And then also did a lot of work on the national level around public health workforce and leadership development and some chronic health and health equity programs. I would say, listening is really, really important. And just building off of what Josh said, relationships are really important. Understanding the communities that you want to affect in the issue areas and really being able to listen. Philanthropy is a space of ideas. And, I think, sometimes we've been talking about evaluation and impact, and all of that is important. But understanding someone at the community level and how being part of a program that you invested in, it's really gratifying to hear the lived experiences. And so there's a piece of it where there's theories and impact, but the lived experiences of people, that is really, really meaningful. I would also say, recognizing that philanthropy is a place of privilege, and that power and money, you could talk to someone and they'll be like, anything you say, like, we'll do it. But is that effective? I don't know, and I, coming from the nonprofit sector, I'm used to being collaborative spaces. And so sometimes I'll throw out an idea and someone will grab onto it and want to do it. And so really being cautious of how you engage with people and actually understanding the needs of the organizations, the community, also recognizing that philanthropy, we're part of an ecosystem, really looking at big social problems, and money is important and influence is important. And as we earlier mentioned, that we have that 30,000 foot level is really important, and resources is not just about money, it's about connecting people and creating spaces for a network of people who have the same values, and actually talking about an issue and thinking together and creating movement rather than just addressing the issue, but looking at root causes is really important when we think about philanthropy and our role in it. I mean, you all talked about this in your small groups. The responsibility of giving away money is really hard because you got to make tough decisions, but at the same time realizing that although there's a lot of money in philanthropy, it's a really it's like a drop in the bucket when you think about state budgets, like just how much money gets poured into for-profit corporate institutions, and really thinking about, again, what the role of philanthropy is, and being a broker in a sense of how do we get people together to really think about an issue. And I'm sorry, Bethany, what was your question? Because I felt like I just ventured off a little bit.
No, it was great. The biggest challenge in the field of philanthropy.
I mean, so really, that's hard to really making decisions. But you all have also talked about theories of change, and as every philanthropic organization has kind of this theory of change. From the endowment's perspective, it's really about how do you shift power and resources, creating agency amongst communities to really take charge and also hold public institutions accountable to serving what they're intended to do. And that's really hard because we've really intentionally made deep connections with community in our place-based work. I particularly work closely with youth organizers. We have a President's Youth Council of youth organizers that helps and advises us on our strategy. And although it's been very beneficial and actually shifted some of our strategies, it's also really tough because they experience a lot. And it's hard because it's good to create those relationships because it makes our work better and more impactful. But at the same time, it's really difficult to hear when someone's best friend got murdered and we're asking them and being extractive sometimes. And how do you create that relationship where you're nurturing their investing in people is essentially. So there's a little bit of investment in the organization, the programs, but it's an investment in people. And that relationship can be really hard because it's empathy, right? Where you kind of just you feel like you're taking on the burden as well, and that's hard. And the burnout is really real. And so finding that balance and, listening to young people all the time has been the best and also the really hardest part of philanthropy in my role. Yeah, and I would say another shift, because of COVID and then also the uprisings for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the racial equity, there's a real intention in some philanthropic organizations to really look at racial equity. What does that mean? How our dollars are actually invested in these communities to actually just to address it, and also the makeup of who's making the decisions. Traditionally, philanthropy has been male and white, and there's the shift of really understanding the root causes of social issues and also engaging people that are most impacted by it. And so that also means looking for people who have the same shared lived experiences as those that you are serving. So you're also seeing intentionality in bringing on program staff. And I will share, philanthropy is not just about program grant makers. There's finance, there's investments, there's people, legal, there's all sorts of venues to kind of enter philanthropy, but an intentionality to really look at who is representing and making decisions about where money is going. And also talking about trust-based philanthropy, a small startup might not be the most fiscally sound, but we're okay in the for-profit sector making those risks. Think about venture capitalists. They do not have a problem throwing millions of dollars in a new tech. And so the idea of investing in organizations that are led by people of color, women, it's from our organization and really across philanthropy, really having really these hard discussions about where our money comes from and and potential harms that we do in our investments, and trying to also really address those really hard questions. It's really hard to talk about racial equity. But we're also having those really deep conversations internally as well. I will say from my organization's perspective, there's the arts and culture are extremely important, but we don't really think about it as institutions. The arts and cultures come from communities. That could be a local artist, it could be spoken word from your local schools, and we think of it as a way, art has always been a way, activism, it's been a way to express a certain issue, a certain thing that's happening in society. People used to do that in a way that they couldn't express it, but they did it in a way, in an art form. And we, a lot of our work, particularly with young people, is how to engage them to expressing the traumas that they feel through arts, through journalism, through spoken word, as I mentioned. And, engage. There's plenty of data that shows that young people engage in that do better in school. When you do better in school, you have better health outcomes, better life outcomes. And so thinking about, and we also fund universities. Some of the universities actually hold some of these programs. And so there's this partnership between community, between universities, and then really thinking outside the box of what art and culture is. And a lot of our kind of drivers of change, the way that we think about our impact and our dollars, is really investing in policy change, systems change, and narrative change. Because sometimes people don't know things, but if you can put it in art form, it hits the heart. And I'll give an example. So in the state of California, one of the work that we do around schools, we wanted to highlight this really jarring statistic that the state of California invested in the building of one university and 19 prisons in a 10-year. So you think about state dollars that are just literally investing in incarcerating people versus educating. And that's not productive. That's not adding any value. But what we did is invested in artivists. That's what they call themselves. And they did this whole art installation, which was really powerful, on a wall with one cap and gown and 19 prison jumpsuits. And it was, it's an Instagrammable moment. People love going to art pop-up art events, and there was a way that hit the general population that might not have known that statistic. But now you're attuned to that it's hard to escape that, knowing that public money is going into something that's really negative. And so now you're engaging the larger population and caring about it. So, that's kind of where the space of philanthropy is really interesting, because you're testing out like how arts, culture, policy, all of that stuff happens. So I was kind of shifting a little bit, but like it's also a way of thinking about things differently than what is traditional institutions of art, university, and what their role is.